strained. To tie a bowline, make a loop at least a foot from the end of the line by crossing the short end over the long end. Next, bring the end through the loop from underneath. Run it behind the long end, up and back down through the same loop. Pull it tight, and you have a bowline. The instant replay? Make a loop by crossing over, end up through the loop, around the long end, and back down the loop, and pull to tighten. There are other ways to tie a bowline that work just as well. Learn at least one method. This is one of the most useful knots on a sailboat. Most dinghies have a line at the bow used for towing, among other things. We call this line a painter. It takes a special knot called a rolling hitch to tie the painter to a separate tow line so it doesn't slip. To tie a rolling hitch, wrap the painter around the tow line twice, wrapping away from the towing boat. After the second wrap, cross the short end over the two turns and put another wrap around the tow line between the painter and the towing boat. Tuck the end under the crossing wrap and pull tight. A rolling hitch slides easily by the knot, but locks when the line is tensioned. Instant replay. Around twice, cross over, around again, and tuck the end. There are many more knots you can learn, but these are some of the most useful. They're not difficult, and with a little practice, they'll become second nature to you. If you're having problems, rewind the tape and tie the knots along with us.
A combination of forces work together to move a sailboat through the water, but the wind and the sails provide most of the driving force. The sail works in two ways, using the wind to develop both a pushing force and a pulling force. Wind striking against the inside of the sail pushes against it, which in turn pushes the sailboat. Wind traveling smoothly over the outside of the sail creates a suction or pull that pulls the sail and the boat through the water. We call that pulling force lift. Part of the principle of lift states that air flowing smoothly over a curved surface will pull or lift the surface. You can demonstrate the principle with a strip of paper. Hold the strip with both hands so it curves in front of your mouth. Now blow lightly across the curve, and the strip will lift up. Airplanes depend on the principle of lift to fly. Air striking the forward edge of the wing is forced over the wing's curved upper surface. This airstream creates a pull on the top surface of the wing and lifts the airplane into the air. A bird's wing works the same way, as the bird glides in the wind. A sail uses the same principle. Wind traveling over the curved outside surface of the sail creates lift or suction that pulls the sailboat through the water. The angle of the sail to the wind is important. If the angle is too steep, the air can't flow smoothly over the outside of the sail to create lift, and the boat slows down. If the angle is too flat, the sail loses its curved shape and flaps. When a sail flaps, it can't produce driving force, and the boat stops. The sails are most efficient at the angle that allows air to flow smoothly over both sides of the sail. When a sailboat changes direction, the sails must be adjusted to maintain the correct angle to the wind. By adjusting the angle of the sails, a boat can use both lift and push to sail in most directions. Sailing downwind, with the wind coming from behind, it's very difficult to adjust the sails to create lift. Sailing downwind, the sail acts like a catcher's mitt, trapping the wind, using only the pushing force to move the sailboat. A sailboat can't sail directly into the wind. As a boat turns toward the wind, it reaches a point where the sails lose power no matter how they're adjusted. When we map these no-sail directions relative to the wind, they form a wedge with the wind direction at the center. We'll call this wedge the no-sail zone. To get to a point that's almost directly upwind, the sailboat has to zigzag, turning through the no-sail zone and sailing on either side of it until it reaches its destination. Sailors call this tacking upwind, or beating. A combination of forces work together to move a sailboat forward. The sails provide most of the energy, but the centerboard, rudder, and hull play important roles too. The driving forces created by sails actually pull the boat at an angle. The closer the sails are hauled in, the more the force on them tries to pull the sailboat sideways instead of forward. The centerboard keeps the boat from slipping sideways. You can see how much it helps by sailing upwind with the centerboard down and the sails properly adjusted, then lifting the board without making any other adjustments. The centerboard works the hardest when the sails are hauled all the way in and the pressure to slide sideways is the greatest. When the boat is sailing downwind, the centerboard offers very little help since most of the sail force is pushing the sailboat forward. The centerboard also helps push the boat forward. The pressure of the wind on the sails and the pressure of the water on the opposite side of the centerboard actually cause the sailboat to shoot forward, the same way a watermelon pitch shoots forward when you squeeze both sides of it with your fingers. Water pressure against the rudder is another force affecting how the boat sails. When the rudder is centered, it helps the centerboard keep the boat from sliding sideways. Changing the rudder angle causes the sailboat to turn. The rudder steers by deflecting water at the stern. When you move the tiller, water passing over the angled rudder pushes the stern of the sailboat in the direction the tiller points, and the boat pivots. The rudder has to be moving through the water to work effectively. So to stay in control, you have to keep the sailboat moving. Boat balance also affects the way a boat sails. Most dinghies are designed to be sailed level. If the hull is tipped as it moves through the water, either side to side or front to back, the sailboat will have a tendency to turn. The tendency to turn can be corrected using the rudder, but that slows the boat down. It's better to balance the hull and level the boat by shifting your weight. Many tillers have an extension that allows the helmsman to move away from the tiller and use his weight to help level the boat. Sailboat balance can make a big difference in how the boat sails. The sails, centerboard, rudder, and hull produce the combination of forces that make a boat sail. These forces interact, and changing one may require adjusting another. If you understand these principles, the sailing skills you learn will make sense and be easier to remember. A good sailor must understand all the forces that act on his boat.
Okay, go ahead. Stay close together.
Ready?
Nice and slow. Nice and slow. Good.
I'm going around. Okay.
Take the main
stern.
sheet.
All right. Under the rudder. All right. On the back to the centerboard case. Okay. Head over to the jib sheet. Just a minute.
Capsizing is a natural part of dinghy sailing and nothing to be afraid of. By learning the scoop method of capsize recovery, you can usually right the boat and be sailing again in just a few minutes. If you do capsize, there is one important rule you should always remember. Stay with the boat, even if you don't think you can right it. Don't try to swim to shore. It's always farther than it looks. You can be seen better, you can float longer, and you will be rescued sooner if you stay with the boat. As we said, capsizing is a natural part of dinghy sailing, but many capsizes can be avoided. The most common cause is a sudden gust of wind that catches a sailor by surprise and overpowers his sailboat before he can release the sails. To avoid capsizing, sail with the main sheet uncleated. If you do tie it off, be ready to release it to spill a sudden gust. The second common cause of capsizing is a loss of balance when sailing downwind, particularly during a jibe on a windy day. To avoid a capsize in these conditions, pay careful attention to the balance of the sailboat and avoid any sudden changes in balance or trim. If a gust does surprise you and your boat capsizes, it's usually a simple matter to get it back up using the scoop method. Once you are in the water, stay in constant contact with your partner so you are both ready when the boat starts to come up. One of you, usually the crew, begins by holding the mast up at the gooseneck, the point where the boom joins the mast, to prevent the sailboat from turning all the way over. That's called turning turtle. At the same time, the other sailor, usually the helmsman, swims around to the centerboard using a sheet as a safety line. If the centerboard is not all the way down, the crew extends it and returns to holding the mast. When the helmsman is in position, he holds the centerboard to prevent the sailboat from turning turtle, while the crew uncleats the main sheet and throws the jib sheet over the hull. Next, the crew gets into the scoop position by holding the hiking strap or the sailboat itself. The helmsman uses the jib sheet as he climbs onto the centerboard to right the boat. As he is scooped, the crew helps right the boat by kicking and pushing. Once it's up, the crew helps the helmsman climb in over the stern. You have to practice the scoop method to learn it just like any other sailing skill. Once you've learned it, you will be able to right your boat after a capsize and be sailing again in only a few minutes. Though the scoop method works in most situations, the traditional method of capsize recovery can also be used. Following the traditional method, the crew moves to the end of the mast and swims the mast around until the sails are downwind. This position prevents recapsizing as the sailboat is righted. The crew uncleats the main sheet and throws the jib sheet over the hull. Then, moving to the bow, he holds the sailboat using the bow line or painter as the helmsman climbs on the centerboard and rights the sailboat. The crew continues to hold the bow until the helmsman climbs in over the stern and gains control. Once the boat is under control, the crew boards over the stern. If you use the traditional method, the boat must be aligned with the wind. Both crew members remain in the water until the sailboat is righted, and one person must hold the bow until the other climbs in and gains control of the boat. The scoop method eliminates these problems and gets you up and sailing faster. Whichever method you decide to use, it's important to practice so you have the skills to right the sailboat if you have to. Many sailboats can be righted as the capsize occurs using the walkover method. This method is usually reserved for more advanced sailing students. To use the walkover method, you have to act fast. As the boat goes over, release the main sheet and straddle the high side of the hull. Holding the sheet, step onto the center board and shift your weight over the board. As the boat comes back up, step back over the high side and back into the cockpit. Done correctly, the step over happens in one fluid motion, but it takes practice like every other sailing skill. Capsizing is a natural part of dinghy sailing and is nothing to worry about. Once you master these recovery techniques, it may even become fun. When you're out on the water, there is always a chance that you could fall overboard. If you're careful and aware of the dangers, the risk is very small, but you should know what to do just in case. Falling overboard is a serious problem. When you hear the words "man overboard" from another boat, immediately try to locate the sailor in the water. Pay particular attention to the water you'll be sailing through. In close quarters, a crewman in the water stands a good chance of being run over if the other sailors aren't paying attention. A man overboard requires quick thinking by the crew remaining on the boat. You can lose sight of a person in the water very quickly, and they may not be able to make noise or wave their arms to help you find them. That's why everyone should wear a PFD, and why man overboard drills are so important. Retrieving the man overboard can be simple if you follow these steps. First, gain control of the sailboat and call out, "Man overboard." Next, look to find the sailor in the water as you sail on a beam reach. That means with the wind coming at the boat from the side. Keeping an eye on the man overboard, tack as soon as possible, turning through the wind until the sailboat is on the opposite beam reach. Continue turning away from the wind and adjusting your speed with the sails until you can steer for the sailor in the water. As the sailboat nears the man overboard, round into the wind to stop just downwind of him. Finally, let the sails flap or luff as you help the lost crew member in over the stern. Every sailor should practice man overboard procedures until it becomes second nature. Use a dummy or float in your drills. A dummy can be made by filling a plastic 5-gallon can with water. The weight of the water will give you some idea of what it takes to pull a wet sailor into the boat. After you try it once or twice, you'll understand why we suggest you use a dummy instead of a friend. There are two alternate methods for retrieving a man overboard that you can use if the winds are light. Using the first method, begin with a tack, turning the sailboat through the wind immediately. Don't uncleat the jib sheet. Leave it tied on the windward side. Adjust the tiller to keep the wind on the beam. This will swing the bow around and allow the sailboat to drift down to the man overboard. When you reach him, help him in over the stern. In light winds, there is another method that will also work. To begin, turn away from the wind and jibe. Steer until you're heading in the opposite direction. When you reach the sailor in the water, round the sailboat into the wind to stop it just downwind of the man overboard. Release the sheets and help him in over the stern. Again, these alternates are only for days with light wind. Using these methods on a windy day could capsize the sailboat.
Most modern sails are triangles of Dacron cloth sewn together to form a curved shape when the wind blows against them. The cloth is very strong and stiff, with heavy reinforcements in the corners. Each corner and each edge has its own name to distinguish it from the others. For demonstration purposes, we'll use a mainsail, but the names of the corners and the edges are the same for any triangle-shaped sail. The top corner of the sail is called the head. The halyards are attached to the head to raise the sail. The bottom front corner is called the tack. The tack is usually attached to a fixed point on the sailboat. The mainsail's tack is attached to the joint between the mast and the boom called the gooseneck. The bottom back corner of the sail is called the clew. The mainsail's clew is fastened to the end of the boom. The front or leading edge of a sail is called the luff. The luff runs from the head down to the tack. The bottom edge of a sail is called the